Let's open our Bibles tonight. Let's open our Bibles tonight, please, to 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. I'm going to start there before turning to several other passages as well. But before the message tonight, I want to mention that while it appears tonight on the world stage that whoever is in control of the American empire is trying very hard to start World War III and a nuclear war with Russia. Whether it's Donald Trump's underlings in his administration, or his cohorts and his comrades at the Jesuit-controlled CIA, acting in cahoots with their British counterparts at MI6, who were definitely involved, having planned, coordinated, and enabled Ukraine's recent drone attack last week against Russia, in which 4 Russian air bases deep inside Russia, one of which is 2,500 miles deep out near Siberia, were attacked by Ukrainian drones. At least 7 of Russia's strategic bomber aircraft were either destroyed or temporarily disabled, although Zelensky and the controlled press falsely bragged that 41 were destroyed. The operation was codenamed Spiderweb, and it was described by some as Russia's Pearl Harbor. This operation was reportedly 18 months in planning. It involved smuggling of drones inside Russia and the trucks from which they were also launched. They placed these drones not too far from these bases somehow, and then controlled the attack remotely from thousands of miles away. It's a rather spectacular attack. And it was definitely actually an embarrassment to Vladimir Putin and Russia's security forces. But the attack occurred on the eve of renewed peace talks between Russia and Ukraine in Istanbul. And it was a deliberate attack against Russia's nuclear bomber fleet. That being one prong of Russia's nuclear triad. And so as such, it was an extremely dangerous and reckless move. Obviously timed to scuttle the Istanbul peace negotiations. But well beyond that, I have personally no doubt this attack was actually designed to trigger activation of Russia's published and well-publicized nuclear response doctrine and protocol, which has, as one of the clauses that authorizes a nuclear retaliation or preemptive nuclear strike by Russia, a provision stating that any non-nuclear state that strikes Russia using conventional weapons in a manner that threatens Russia's strategic nuclear deterrence or Russia's existential survival, and that is backed or aided by a nuclear power, will be treated as an attack on Russia by that nuclear power. And as Scott Ritter says, the Russians don't have a habit of bluffing. So in my mind, this was a deliberate attempt to, at the very least, provoke a limited tactical nuclear battlefield response, which would then, as Zelensky would hope, require the Western powers to enter the war to rescue Ukraine. Or it would instead accomplish what I have warned for years the devil's globalist cabal has planned to do. At least 10 years I've been warning about this, which their goal is to spark a nuclear exchange between East and West that would threaten the world with nuclear annihilation and would force global compliance with the empire of the beast, would force a global government. And so as U.S. Marine Intelligence Officer and UN Weapons Inspector Scott Ritter said a couple days ago, the Russian nuclear doctrine was definitely triggered by this attack. The Russian Defense Ministry, no doubt, definitely went into full nuclear alert to determine if they were actually under general nuclear attack. And Russia would have been legally justified, if not morally at least. They were at least legally justified in the use of nuclear weapons, either in retaliation or to preempt what they had every right to believe was a follow-on attack by the U.S. and Britain. Fortunately, cooler heads in Moscow prevailed, and in a publicly released video of a meeting with his cabinet, Russian President Vladimir Putin was visibly angry, but he actually made no mention of the airbase attacks, perhaps because those attacks showcased an embarrassing failure on the part of his own intelligence and security services. But Putin instead condemned a separate strike by Ukraine at about the same time against a passenger train and bridge in which several civilians were killed, and he therefore declared the Zelensky regime ruling in Kiev as a terrorist organization. And that changes the game quite a bit here. And he said the perpetrators and their backers would be brought to justice, which then now legally authorizes Putin under Russian law to target Zelensky and his Nazi and entourage for termination. And personally, it wouldn't hurt my feelings if Moscow dropped an Oreshnik missile on Zelensky and his Nazi entourage. But then on another front, it was disclosed yesterday in various media reports and confirmed by Trump himself, both yesterday and today, that non-essential personnel have been evacuated from several Middle East American military bases in advance of a pending or imminent strike by Israel against Iran's nuclear development facilities. They understand that Israel has 3 groups of attack aircraft kind of circling, loitering over Syria. And so it appears that one way or another, the empire will have its war with Russia, Iran, and perhaps China as well. And that's the state of world affairs tonight at present. And it does appear to me, as we discussed a couple weeks ago, that all the pieces are in place for that second seal of Revelation 6 to be loosed at any time now. For tonight, however, what does appear tonight on the world stage, that whoever is in control of the American empire is trying very hard to start World War III. And while I want you all to be fully informed of these things and not to be ignorant of the devil's devices, the fact is that we who are the redeemed of the Lord have much better and brighter things to put our focus on than the trouble this world is in. And so instead for tonight, I have a topical message about heaven. We'll talk about heaven tonight. It's actually a follow-up to the expository message I brought 3 weeks ago